Good morning, fellow colleagues in the world of education. Thank you. My name is Maurice Brown, and I'm a senior lecturer in finance and business strategy and innovation at the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht. Utrecht, for those of you who do not know where it is, it's in the middle of the Netherlands and represents probably one of the largest student cities in the Netherlands. Our school, as you can see, has in excess of 36,000 students or so. And it's a very vibrant school. We have an English program in finance and international business, and that is where I am based. I'd like to begin my story, actually, with my presentation with a story, actually. And this happened a few years ago. I was getting ready to prepare a class that I was getting ready to teach, and a student arrived quite early. And we were engaged in conversation. And at this point, at one point he said to me, "Excuse me, can I borrow your pen?" I said, "My pen?" Now, I don't know if this is a unique experience, but has this ever happened to you before? Has a student ever come in and asked you for a pen? Well, lucky for you. Well, for me, I found this a very annoying question. Here was somebody about to attend my class without a pen. So I said to him, "Excuse me, but are you really coming to this class? How are you going to participate?" And at this point, the young gentleman lifted up his shirt and began to reach into the front of his pants, his jeans. And I took a step back, and I said, "Exactly what are you doing, young sir?" And he pulled out a tablet. And he said, "This is what I take my notes on, sir." What followed was a conversation where I tried to impress on him the pen is mightier than the tablet, but there was just no reasoning. The message was not resonating. So eventually we came to a stalemate. However, after reflecting on the day's events, it began to dawn on me. I had been beaten. The computer, the mobile phone, the bane of existence in my classroom, was about to be joined by yet another instrument, the tablet. And he was going to tell me that this was a learning tool. I had to wake up to the reality that this was here to stay. And I had a choice. Actually, I had no choice. I had to embrace this. This was the smart thing to do. I had to find a way to make this mine. And so, thinking about the whole thing of how to make the technology mine, I decided that the future had to incorporate this, not only because it was smart, but because anytime I saw a smiling student in my class, I realized it wasn't what I was saying. It was actually something they were looking at a computer. So began my journey into the classroom with how do I get them to incorporate this technology into my class. I'm a finance teacher and also the course leader for one of the most dreaded subjects at my school, Finance and Managerial Accounting 1 and 2. It is a particularly intensive subject. Very challenging, especially for the first years. The learning curve is very difficult. It's very hard. Students need to be motivated. For the teachers, it is also very demanding. It is demanding both mentally and physically. The failure rate for this subject is noticeably higher than other subjects. And as course leader, I wrestled with this. I took a good stock of my situation and analyzed and came up with the following. Success rate was low. Good teaching had brought us as far as 35%, or 44% when taking it for a second time. Time. We had a lot of material to cover, both teacher and student, and we had a limited time in order to do this. Plus, with new changes to the curriculum, we were now going to be forced into a much more stricter regime in terms of time. Human resources. Limited amount of teachers available to teach the subject, and the students were becoming increasingly demanding, especially those that were not confident in the subject area. Student participation, passive. It was one where they sat back and waited for us to work through the questions. Tracking the learning process. Are they really understanding what we're teaching them? Are they really getting this message? Quite often, we only knew the results of this after the exam. By then, it was too late. So what you were left with was a situation where you were fixing the barn doors after the horses had come home. And lastly, the future prospects. The university's international and business program was increasing each year. It's growing. This meant more classes and even larger classes in terms of students. This would create an increasingly taxing situation on not only the human resource, but also the resources infrastructure. The last few years I've actually seen a number of theories and buzzwords circulating within the educational sphere. Terminologies and concepts such as flipping the classroom and blended learning are now part of the educational consciousness. And while I may have been too busy to attend all these seminars, I did pay attention, and I let some of this sink into my consciousness as well. Understanding the key concepts and theories of what were they really trying to get forward. Also at this time, I took a leap. We had taken a new edition of our finance book, which had a lot of online resources provided for us by Cengage. I will say that, honestly, when I began looking at online resources, it was purely selfish. How can I reduce my workload and the workload of my colleagues? However, as I began to dig deeper and deeper into what was available, I began to see that there were much bigger possibilities at stake here. I began to see where I could intertwine this technology at hand with the concepts of blended learning and flipping the classroom. This mesh of technology in the classroom opened the door for a change, a new way of engagement. We were going to change the rules of engagement. After discussing this with my colleagues, we chose for a hybrid approach. And in this hybrid approach, we took our tutorial sessions and we split it. We split it into what we call computer lab sessions, and then we had classical teaching sessions, but we also made this quite interactive. The result is C-Lab, or C-Now, Cengage Now C-Lab sessions, where we're able to distribute the course and workload and responsibility back from teacher to student. By making the assignments time-specific, this also meant that students were better prepared coming into the room, and also, if they were not prepared, we were able to spot this immediately and very quickly. It also meant that students were more engaged and active throughout the classical tutorial sessions that came. And the reason for this was, having worked before with the computer program, they were much more learned on the material that we were actually going to present and actually tackle in the classical session. The role of the teacher, myself and my colleagues, has changed. During the C-Lab sessions, it is more supervisory. We are the observer. We walk around the classrooms, we answer questions, and real good questions, because the students are actually focused on trying to solve the questions or problems that are presented to them, right? We can track each class separately. And this is a new feature that allows us as colleagues to sit back and actually look at each class, compare each class, but also look at each student individually. Also, as colleagues, it has forced us to be more interactive as we compare a lot of our notes and what we see happening within the classroom and subject areas. So this has been a great bonus for us. From the student perspective, students are better prepared for class. Not only that, they take a greater role in owning their success and in determining their future. Recently in September, we decided to experiment with students working in groups of 2s or 3s. And the benefit of that is that working on a computer program session can sometimes be a lonely experience, especially for a weak student. By pairing them together, they are now joined and actually support and are responsible for each other's success. The result is the classroom has become, believe it or not, a lot more noisy. but it's good noise, because the noise generated is actually teams working with each other to try and get to the right solutions. One of the other surprising results of this is rivalry between teams. Students are actually competing with each other to see who can finish the assignments first and get the best grade. Another role that has sort of crept into this new function of engagement, if you want to say, is that I now have a reporting function. Each week, I download the profiles of the class and students, and then I send this to my colleagues. Each spreadsheet allows us to analyze, once again, the classroom and the students, and helps us to identify areas that need improvement, whether it be a particular chapter or student. And another great benefit of it is we actually know what kind of exam to set. Therefore, if we look back at the issues that I had before and where we are now, success rate has improved. We've gone up to 55% in some cases, and as far as 60%. That's impressive for us, believe it or not. Time. Students can now work on their assignments before, during, and after the sessions. This now allows us, the teacher, to actually focus on the more difficult questions in the classical session, and also allows us to explore concepts and theories a bit more, if you want to say, a bit more in depth. Human resources. Teacher workload has been reduced. I don't want to say this too loud, but we could actually increase the teacher to class ratio because of this. But we won't tell management this. All right? Tracking the learning process. Students can now be determined, their progress can actually be determined before the exam. Therefore, once again, giving us the opportunity to see where the student is along the project on the way to the path towards the exam, and giving us the chance to help boost the success. Future prospects. The subject and the university are in a better position to deal with any future growth going forward. So the question is, where do we go from here? I certainly have not reached utopia as a finance teacher, and I still have students who come unprepared to lectures in terms of not having read their chapters. Recently, I've looked at evaluating two programs. One of them is Bing Pulse, and the other one is OneNote. Bing Pulse lives online, and opens the door for me to begin evaluating and engaging students before, during, and after an actual lecture. By creating mini quizzes based on lecture material before they attend lectures, I can gently coerce my students into reading their chapters before time. And who knows, we actually may use this as an admission. OneNote allows us to actually create course content and share this with teachers and students and actually grade papers online. I have a small video of 1 minute. Could you play that, please?
Every day, technology transforms how teachers teach and students learn. 93% of teachers now use some sort of digital tool to guide instruction. But when it comes to student response systems, over 2/3 of teachers and students are unsatisfied with the tools they use. They're either too clunky, too complex, too time-consuming, or too expensive. That's too bad. At Bing Pulse, we believe classroom engagement should be fast, simple, fun, and free. Pulse gives students the ability to let the teacher know in real time whether they understand a lecture or not. Students vote every 5 seconds and as often as they want, with the results updating instantaneously. Teachers see insights in real time and can adjust their lecture with a simple glance at their dashboard on any tablet, phone, or PC. Quizzes and poll questions allow teachers to test knowledge and comprehension before, during, and after class. Real-time insights are made easy for teachers and can be compared across groups and teams and downloaded for later reference.
We can stop that.
Age-specific themes and...
Just to give you an idea of where we're going. The teaching and learning experience is changing. And our challenge facing us is how do we diversify our teaching structure to be one that is from being passive to one where students are actively engaging and want to be active. We need to be smart with the resources at our disposal, and there is so much for us to do with so little time. I want to stress the point. Technology in itself is not teaching. Technology is merely an accelerator for the learning process. It provides us with a flexible means by which to shape and morph our teaching and learning experience to fit our situational needs. It also opens the door for us to engage the student both inside and outside the classroom. These things take time and investment, I know. However, once set, they practically run themselves. I recognize that not everyone has technology at their disposal and that the infrastructure may be difficult, but take the time to seek out what institutions can help you to do this. There's a lot of educational software out there available for us. So, together, let's go out there. Let's change the rules of engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice.